San Diego is one of the best cities for LGBTQ plus people across the United States. As of 2015, around 4% of our population identifies as a member of this community. Although the city is doing a really great job of creating an inclusive environment for everyone, what are we doing as individuals, and better yet as a church, to be welcoming of people of all backgrounds? Giving our support is important, because lack of support is one of the reasons why suicide rates are so high amongst LGBTQ plus youth. They have suicide rates about 3 times higher than their straight peers. And that's why it's important to provide a safe and loving environment for the queer and trans person in our life, whether they're a family member or someone within your faith community. In this episode of Community Connections, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the queer community, understanding what issues they face, and how to become more supportive people in their lives. I'm also going to be sharing my experience as a member of this community with all of you. Something we need to cover before discussing the issues that queer people face is understanding the different identities within the community. And there's 2 main categories within it: sexuality and gender identity. Sexualities are labels like straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, which describe the attraction someone has for another person. And these exist separate from gender identities, and that includes things like cisgender, transgender, non-binary, and genderqueer. It's important to know that people from any gender identity can identify with any sexual identity. For example, just as a cis person can be straight, gay, bisexual, so can a transgender or non-binary person. It's important to know this because we don't talk about transgender and non-binary identities that much. So what are these gender identities? Cisgender is used to describe anyone who doesn't have a conflict with the way they were assigned at birth. Being transgender means that you don't identify with the sex you were assigned at birth. And non-binary is someone who doesn't identify with the binary at all, and they may use pronouns like they, them to describe themselves. So what are the issues facing the queer community? One of the biggest issues that we face is that a lot of us go home to unsupporting and unloving families. This can make someone 8.7 times more likely to attempt suicide. And we all know how important these family structures are to people, especially when they're healthy and loving. Having your family relationships switch into something negative can be extremely traumatizing for a person. Sometimes it drives people towards self-harm, drug abuse, engaging in risky behavior, or at worst, suicide. We need to ensure that we're there for our family members, even if we're distant relatives, even if their immediate family isn't. Having someone on your side is so important as a queer person. Another big issue is the lack of comfort in expressing one's sexual identity or gender identity with people. Coming out can be really scary for a lot of people because there is a fear that you're going to be ostracized from your community or rejected by your own family. Some people get kicked out of their homes or lose their livelihood over being outed against their will. And there's a lot of systemic issues which the queer community faces as well. According to the ACLU, over 100 bills have been introduced to state legislatures which aim to strip away the rights of transgender individuals. They also found that there are many states with laws on the books about discriminating against LGBTQ plus people on the basis of religious beliefs. And we saw this a lot during the Trump administration, especially when they were pushing for the removal of non-discrimination policies within the Affordable Care Act. And their goal in doing that was to strip away the basic rights to healthcare that transgender people have. It's clear that there's still an issue going on, and we still have a lot of work to do in supporting our queer community members. I wanted to share my experience as a queer person with all of you today in order to help give a better understanding of what it can be like for some people. Growing up, I was raised in a Mexican and Catholic, very traditional home. I grew up participating in church a lot, and I spent a lot of my time as an altar server, singing in the choir. I went to catechism and all of my Sunday schools, and I really enjoyed participating in church. When I was a teenager, I was outed to my family, and it didn't go well. My mom was not approving of it at all, and I spent the next 5 years of my life in an extremely physically and emotionally abusive household. When my youth leader found out at my church, I was treated really horribly, and I would hear her say things such as, living that kind of lifestyle was a sin. Being gay was a sin. And you can have those feelings, but you can't act on them, because acting on them would send you to hell. And hearing messages like this from the community that you were so strongly tied to damages someone, and it hurts people. And I spent a lot of years dealing with depression and anxiety and that sense of isolation from losing the communities that you care about. And being rejected from my faith and my faith community without feeling like there were other options was really lonely and really isolating. And I shoved God away for a long time because I didn't think there was a place for me within Christianity. And those kind of things push you to do things that harm yourself. There was self-harm, there were suicidal ideations, there were me failing all my classes in high school because I couldn't get a break from being shamed about the way I lived my life. So I spent a lot of my time living with the repercussions of that. It's taken me 7 years to graduate because up until recently, I wasn't comfortable enough in my home and wasn't comfortable enough living as my true self. And being here with all of you has been life-changing for me. And I know now that there's a place for me within this community. And there's a place for me within Christianity. There's a place for me in the space of faith. And doing that has allowed me to succeed more than I could have before. And there's not enough places like this in the world. There's not enough places like this across the United States even. Having community is so important to the well-being of a person, and without it, I don't know where I would have been or where I would be. As a trans queer individual, I don't know where I would be without the support systems that I had. Although my mom wasn't supportive, I had an aunt who was. I had family who was and who loved me unconditionally. I had people in my life tell me that it was okay to be queer. It was okay to be trans. It's okay to live like that. And God doesn't hate you for it. And I just want to say thank you to all of you for making this space safe for me and making me feel welcome here. So now that you know a little bit about me, what are the expectations for us as a church? What are the expectations for us as a faith community? How can we foster these safe environments and be the safe space that people need? Galatians chapter 3 verse 28 is really clear in saying that we all belong here, that we are all one group, one community in Christ. It reads, "There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free, nor is there male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus." God is clearly welcoming of all people, regardless of how they identify in their faith, gender, sexuality, or anything else. Because at the end of the day, we are one. We are one people. No matter what, we are one community that stands strong together. For many years and across many different Christian groups, we've heard the Bible be weaponized and used to exclude people from practicing their faith. They use the Bible to justify oppression and exclusion of people based on their sexuality or gender identity, forgetting that God is loving of all of his people and all of his creations, because we're all made in God's image. We're all loved and we're all welcomed into God's kingdom. So why don't we do the same and welcome and love all of those while we're on earth? We all want to care and support for the queer community, and you guys have all done such a great job of welcoming and supporting me. But how do we take that support farther? And how do we extend that welcoming hand to people outside of our faith community? One way is by normalizing pronouns and pronoun usage. We can introduce ourselves with our pronouns and our name and ask people for theirs, even if they're cisgender and we know it. Asking makes it normal. We can also include our pronouns in all of our emails and have it next to our name, because doing this sends the message that all are welcome and all gender identities are included in our community. And another way to be a great ally to us is by correcting the way someone refers to another person if you know that they use a certain set of pronouns. More things we can do is use inclusive language that shows that there's a safe space for queer and trans people in our community. This can be things like using the word partner or spouse when describing or asking about someone's romantic life. This sends the message that it's safe to share information with you, regardless of how they may identify or how their partner identifies. Another thing we can do is do the research ourselves. Sometimes it's a lot to ask of a queer person to have them explain their whole life to you or explain the whole LGBTQ community. There's a lot of research we can do on our own, and we can check out the HRC or the Trevor Project for a lot of information about the LGBTQ plus community. Doing these things is important. Just because you're not opposed to queer people doesn't make you an ally. You have to show up and you have to be present, whether or not someone is looking. Because honestly, it matters the most when we're not around, and it makes the most difference when no one is looking. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. I hope that you've enjoyed this series so far, because I've really enjoyed making it for all of you. I hope to see you all soon. Bye!